Welcome to the second section of this choice board, which is working once again on solving the same types of problems we were solving in section I.1. Except this time we're going to be working on solving using plus-minus chips. Plus-minus chips are red and black chips. Now I'm using it here on the computer, but you could easily use it on actual by hand. A black plus-minus chip is a -1, and a red plus-minus chip is equal to a +1. And what happens if you have one positive chip and one negative chip together, I call that a 0. Okay? And it's important that you can add or subtract zeros from the board at any time. So if I take one positive and one negative chip and add it to the board, it doesn't change the board's value. That's very important. Also, if you have any number of zeros together, it's still going to be equal to the same zero. So that's very important. At any point during the problem, you can add 100 zeros to the board and it won't change the board's value. So as we move to our first set of problems, just like when you're working with number lines, you always want to start with the number here on the left. So in this case, we want to start with two positive chips. So that means we are going to bring two positive chips to the board. Here is one, and here is the second. So that is step one always. We started with our two positive chips. Now, step two here is, are we adding to the board or taking away from the board? A positive would be adding to the board. That in this case, we are going to be adding. But you could easily, subtracting, be taking away. So it wants us to start with two positive chips and then add, and that's our third number here. We're going to be adding 3 positive chips to the board. So there's 1, 2, 3. And since we only have positive chips, nothing else has to change about this problem. Therefore, our answer of 2 plus 3 is going to be equal to 5. So now that one is pretty simple, straightforward, but this gets a little bit tougher after a few problems. So let's start with another simple one and then go from here. So in this problem, once again, 3 steps. We're going to change our color here. Step 1 is we are going to do 4 positive chips to the board, because that is a +4. So there's 4 chips. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this time, when we are working with our negative sign, that means take away. So it wants us to take away 2 positive chips from the board, which means that I'm going to cross out 2 positive chips from the board. Since we only have one type of chip, that means we are done. So 4 minus 2, once again, not too tough, is simply +2. So always 3 steps. The sign in the middle tells us, are we adding or taking away from the board? So as we move to this one, now we're going to get a little bit tougher. We still start with our first number, which in this case is 2 negative chips. So we take 2 negative chips and we add them to the board. Now, we want to take away 3 positive chips. Now, here's where he talked about earlier in the problem. We don't have 3 positive chips to take away. In order to get positive chips on the board, we need to add multiple zeros. So what we do is we add these in groups. So this right here, this is 1, 0. The value of our board is still -2. Nothing has changed about our board. We need to take away 3 positive chips. So we have to add 3 zeros. Okay, so there is another 0 right there. We need to add one more 0 to our board. So our board is still worth the same amount, which is -2, and we need to take away 3 positive chips. 1, 2, 3. Now it's important to understand that the board has an infinite number of zeros on it. We just have to bring in the chips to showcase that. So I could bring in 10 zeros or 11 zeros. It doesn't matter. You just have to have the minimum of the number you need to take away. So that means our current board value is worth negative 5. So negative 2 minus 3 is going to be equal to negative 5. Okay? So we got about 4 more here. So this one, we are going to start with our value on the left, which is negative 3. And then we want to add 5 positive chips to the board. So if we start with negative 3, 1, 2, 3. We bring these to the board here. 1, 2, and 3. Now this time we have to add 5 chips to the board. So there's nothing to take away. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now let's try a trick here. See if that works. Whoop, that brought 6 over. So let's delete 1 here. There we go. So we now have 5 chips on the board. Now here's the problem from before. We always were done at this point if you had problems on the board, or if you only had one color of chips on the board. But this time we don't. We actually have 3 zeros. Let's try that. We have 3 zeros here on the board, which means because they're zeros, we can ignore them or get rid of them. And then this time we are left with 2 positive chips. So negative 3 plus 5 is equal to positive 2. Let's keep going. So now we have negative 3 minus 3. So we start with negative 3. Whoa, that is not what we wanted. So 1, 2, 3. But this time we need to take away 3 positive chips. So we don't have 3 positive chips. So that means we have to add at least 3 zeros. But I'm going to show you what it's like if you add 4 zeros, just to talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to add 4 reds to make sure we have the same number of zeros. So there's 1. Whoop, that didn't come over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have a board position is still negative 3, and I need to take away 3 positive chips. So I take away 1, 2, 3 positive chips, gone. Now we have this right here is still a 0, so that can be ignored, and our board is left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negative chips left over. So our negative 3 minus 3 is equal to negative 6. Here we go. I would say these are the tougher problems, but if you break them up into 3 steps, still not that bad. So we start with 1 positive chip. Now, we need to take away 2 negative chips. We don't have 2 negative chips to take away, so we need to add 2 zeros. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Now our value of our board is still positive 1, and I'm going to take away my 2 negative chips right there and right there. So our board is currently worth 1, 2, 3. So 1 minus negative 2 is equal to a positive 3. So if you did not score a high enough value on this one, so either 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 on this video, you will need to do the video retake. If you have any questions, please